podcast number. I always forget that. It's podcast number 27. Exciting episode for a couple of reasons, several reasons. One, we're gonna talk about Ironman Boulder special race. Two, I'm here with legendary coach Eric Kenney, and three, hosting it at the super popular Colorado Multisport CMS. Pumped.
Cool. Perfect. So, all right, another podcast. Eric Kenney in the house. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is great.
Cool. So, today we're going to talk about Ironman Boulder, and I'm really excited because, of course, we live in Boulder, so this is our, local race, and I wanted to, create a podcast that talks about the race and not necessarily about, the pros or who's going to win it or those kinds of things, but, good information that we can share with people who are going to be doing the race, and also family and friends that are going to come here to cheer on their loved one. So we're going to talk about a lot of things, especially, if Ironman Boulder is your first Ironman in general. We'll talk about some tips and advice and insight, and we're also going to talk about specific things related to the venue and race execution, things like that. But before doing that, Eric, which, by the way, thanks CMS for the amazing beer. Gosh, it just spoiled. I think this is my favorite new place to.
I think our waitress is coming by again later. I'm not sure.
Oh man, let's talk about Eric first. So Eric, for the people who live in Boulder and do triathlon, they, people know about you, of course. But why don't you share with us a little bit about your background, where you're from, how did you get into all things endurance sports? Because you didn't start with triathlon, you started with rowing and other crazy things. So walk us a little bit through who Eric is.
Oh man, I guess it depends on how far back we really want to go, but I guess a quick kind of background is my parents were very into the outdoors and were both on the National Ski Patrol.
Oh wow! Awesome.
In New England, where I'm from, and so I started skiing, before I turned 2, and I was just in the outdoors, and I really enjoyed skiing and hiking and rock climbing and ice climbing and all that kind of stuff. And then when I got to college, I started rowing, and I thought, wow, this is great. I mean, I did like soccer in high school and, kind of normal stuff. And so I started rowing in college, and then I rowed after college in Boston at a boat club. And I went to a development camp for the national team for a couple summers. And I was very much into that. And then that's when I started coaching, when I was rowing in 1999.
You started coaching
rowing, yeah.
Rowing.
Well, I got like my first coaching job was I was the assistant varsity coach for Buckingham Brown and Nichols, which is a prep school in Boston.
Got it.
And so I started coaching for them, and then after rowing, I was a road cyclist for a long, long time, and out east and out here, and then
how do you find, or how do you start cycling? I mean, was it were you just curious about cycling? Was it because you got injured? Because that happens a lot, right? Yeah. When you get injured in one sport, you start doing something else, or
it wasn't because of an injury per se, but I did have an elbow thing going on when I was rowing, and cycling was something that was very it wasn't very taxing on your body, and you could do it for long periods of time. So especially with indoor rowing, it's like, you're on the rowing machine for an hour, and even as an elite rower, you're like, I'm done, get me off of this thing. It's hard on your back and your upper body and all that kind of stuff. And so with cycling, I actually started cycling so I could cycle in the winter, believe it or not. With cycling, I would go on the bike and I could ride, and it was just all legs, made my legs real strong for rowing. And I would go ride for 2 or 2.5 hours, and it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
And doing a 2.5 hour workout as a rower was kind of, that was
I see.
very challenging thing to do. And so that's how I picked it up. And there was a local kind of training criterium that was, it went all summer long. And I remember me and some of my friends did that a few times while I was a rower. And I had another friend who was a rowing friend who was a cyclist in the past, in that picture that you just saw a little while ago.
Yep.
And so we got into cycling a little bit from him. And then I remember I went to national team trials the second time for my second time in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
I did not win. And then 2 weeks later, I did a bike race, and I never looked back. And I was a bike racer for 9 years straight.
That's awesome.
So,
and
yeah.
that was road cycling?
Yeah.
Got it. And how did that evolve into triathlon?
I always really was intrigued by triathlon, and I remember hearing about, Kona and, Mark Allen.
Totally.
When I was a rower, and I was reading about triathlon, and I was reading about what people did for training, like when I was a rowing coach, and so I remember reading, when I was a rower, I remember reading this really big training book, and it was for triathlon, and so I was always interested in it. I actually did multi-sport stuff a little bit, like duathlons or triathlons, in the off season, like at the end of the cycling year.
Okay.
I did the Silverman triathlon before, when it was very young, like in 2007 and 8. I would do the road season, and then I would kind of run for 6 weeks, and then go do a half Ironman as
That's
a
awesome.
fun kind of survival thing to do.
Yeah.
So
Cool. And so did also triathlon bring you to Boulder?
No, I moved here in 2006,
Okay.
and it was kind of just like the right time to kind of leave Boston. We were kind of over the city, and and so all of my friends were kind of having kids and moving farther away, and I thought, let's quit while I'm out here.
So when you started coaching, did you start focusing on triathlon and you moved to Boulder? Is that
No, I mean, I was coaching rowing, and I was coaching a lot of road cyclists back in New England, and I didn't, we came out here for the area in the mountains, and so I didn't come out here specifically to coach, but I was already coaching a lot, and when I moved out here,
right?
EK Endurance, my business, EK Endurance Coaching, that was already kind of set up and done before I came out here.
And now you have your coaching business, EK Endurance, and you also, I love this about what you do. You're also coaching two, correct me if I'm wrong, elite age group triathlon teams. One is all female, and one is all male. Talk more about that, because I love it. I love to see the posts on social media. It seems like your athletes, I think your philosophy is about you train together, and you really have fun together. You go to races together. Why don't you talk more about the teams that you're coaching right now?
So I'm the kind of performance director for Vixen Racing. I don't coach all of the women on that team, but I'm kind of the coach for them. So we ran a training camp in St. George this year, and I'm available to all of them. They can come to my group workouts and things like that. I do coach a handful of women on the team. And then Boulder Racing, which is the men's team that I started. And again, I don't coach everybody on the team, but and the idea is kind of this, amateur kind of development type of team. And so, the Boulder Racing anyway is very, it's one of those things, I don't necessarily care how fast you are, but we care about that you are committed and determined to becoming better and to, kind of excelling in the sport and moving on and moving forward. And so everyone is racing both locally to support a lot of our local races because we have so many good ones, and then national and international type events.
Right.
And so, half Ironman national championships St. George. We have people going to age group nationals. We have people doing, age group worlds, draft legal and non-draft legal, things like that. So, and so that's always great. And there's always, and the reason why I wanted to do this and, is there's like this huge gap. And I was just talking to a really well-known coach, Ian. I can't well-known, but I forgot his last name. Who's here in Boulder, coaches a lot of like ITU pro athletes, World Cup type athletes. We were talking about this. There's this huge gap with that level, and even in long course, there's this big gap between amateur and pro. And even if you take like the top amateurs at any, half Ironman, for example, and then you look at the pros, even the bottom end of the pros, there's this huge gap.
Yeah.
And so we try to get these teams like an Everyman Jack as well. But these teams and Vixen has done this great job of giving a home to these athletes and trying to really put them together and get everyone up a level and really kind of excel.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed, especially when I see your posts on social media and Instagram. I see that there's a lot of camaraderie, which I think it's important. The fact that I guess you guys train together, or maybe not all the time, but at least when you get together, you push yourselves and you not only have fun, but you also try to do your best to get faster or to be better in general. So that's something that it's pretty cool. You have all kinds of athletes. I mean, you train all kinds of athletes, right? I mean, are they mostly like long distance triathlon type of athletes, half Ironman, full Ironman, or do you also train other athletes as well for other sports?
Yes to all of those. I mean, definitely there's a lot of long course athletes that I do work with. But especially this year, the Vixen team, a lot of the really fast women on the Vixen team are short course and Xterra.
Oh, cool.
And so, Tess is turned pro at the end of last year for Xterra, and Paige is a newer girl on the Vixen team who I started working with this year. She won duathlon nationals both days, the draft legal and non-draft legal. And Jordan, and there's some really fast short course girls that are focused on short course stuff as well. And so, and then, I work with, all kinds of athletes, rowers, runners, trail runners, mountain bikers, some ski mountaineering athletes as well. Rory Kelly, who's a friend of mine that I consult with frequently, who's been on the national team a few times for ski mountaineering, cycling, of course, and triathlon. Yeah. Nice. So, it's really fun. It gets me, it keeps me kind of always thinking and learning and not getting too comfortable with one, particular thing. So.
Awesome. Yeah. This is such a random question, but again, I'm random. Every time I see your post, your Instagram post, your house, you have the sweetest background ever. Where do you live? You live in the mountains, right?
Yeah, I live in the Colorado mountains. I'll tell you that. I live in the woods. It's awesome.
Yeah. So. Any encounters with mountain lions or any wildlife there?
A bear got into my neighbor's house a couple years ago.
Crazy.
I haven't I've had neighbors that have seen mountain lions or whatever, which is kind of scary. It makes you realize you're not at the top of the food chain, but yeah, it's pretty, you just kind of keep your windows and doors that are on ground level closed, and things like that.
But don't worry, people who are coming to do Ironman Boulder, you're not going to see any mountain lions or anything like that.
Probably
Right.
not. You might see a coyote or something, but otherwise, I think you'll be good.
Cool. So let's before we talk about Ironman Boulder, let's talk a little bit about Boulder in general. I mean, especially people who are coming, never been here. So Boulder is it's located in altitude, right? How high is Boulder? 6,000?
5,400 feet.
5,400 feet, right?
55, depends on exactly where you are.
Yeah, and I think it's only like an hour drive from Denver and like a 45-minute, 1 hour drive from Denver International Airport. I don't know. It's like a pretty convenient spot, and it's called or known as the Bubble, I think sometimes. Why is that, Eric? Why is it Boulder known as the Bubble? Go.
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of becoming less of a bubble lately. But it's, I mean, especially,
Silicon Valley 2, part 2.
5-10 years ago. I mean, it's very just contained, and there's so much. There's a lot of great things to do here. And the mountains are very close. There's a lot of great trail running.
Yeah, you're right. It's so convenient. I mean, for to do all things that you want to do, like if you want to get a long road, a long ride on your bicycle, you can just get on any kind of roads.
Yeah.
Same thing with trail running. You just, you drive to the trailheads. It only takes you like 10-15 minutes, if not less.
Yeah.
Gravel roads. Now that gravel riding, it's really popular.
Yep.
So it's so awesome, and good food, good beer, plenty of breweries.
Yeah,
So.
we always joke like, oh man, I don't want to drive south of Valmont, like that's so far. Like, and it's like, it's like I can, basically live in this like 3-mile radius.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But it's very. I mean, there's other reasons why people call it the Bubble, but it's it's a nice place. There's a lot of things to do here, and a lot of outdoor activities are very accessible. And
Got it.
It's great.
All right. You want to talk about Ironman Boulder or Ironman in general?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Let's do both. I mean, we're talking about Boulder, so let's just talk about.
All right. So you want to talk a little bit about the race venue. So people, when they come here, the swim part is going to take place at the Boulder Reservoir, aka the Res. That's how we call it here.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the bike portion is going to be on several parts of Boulder and surroundings, and the marathon is gonna take place mostly along the Boulder Creek path, right?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
Most of it. So, you want to talk a little bit about I don't know, how is it to swim at the Res, or the bike course in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
or how do you want to?
First of all, like the race. The reservoir, the Boulder Reservoir, you have to drive to. You're not gonna walk over there, right? Like, I mean,
it's
you
not
could, depending on where you're staying, but most likely you're gonna be driving out there. It's not that far, but it's not like the transition areas that are like right downtown, like Lake Placid or St. George, or Louisville. Like it's not like that, right? So it's just on the edge of the edge of Boulder. Again, it's not very far away, but you're gonna drive out there.
Totally.
The reservoir, it's down down this road, and it's kind of out at the reservoir.
And you had great observation, because one of the logistic, I don't want to say challenges, but like if you are racing, or even if you're a family member or friend, get into the reservoir, it's not easy, because you have to go to get there. You're going to have to take a shuttle that picks up people from the Boulder High School. So you have to go to the Boulder High School and then take a bus to SwimStar. So you cannot drive to the Res. And I've tried doing that before when I was just trying to go and find friends at the reservoir. There's no way that you can, like, the roads are closed, and as long as you have a bike or, I don't know, scooter or something where you can find a way to, it's hard to just...
Technically, this year I would double check on this, but they won't even let you ride a bike in there in the morning, which is a little ridiculous.
Dude. I remember.
So they have the shuttles. You have to take a shuttle out there in the morning, It's not that big of a deal if
No.
you're racing. Don't freak out about it. It can be a little bit stressful, but they do this at St. George. They did it at St. George at the Ironman when it was there. They'll be doing it again with the Ironman back there.
Next
They do
year.
it at the half, and they've been doing it at Boulder for a little while. It's not very far, and you just go down to where the shuttles are, and they just load them up and they send them out. It's only going to take it's a 10-minute drive.
And you have to go to the Boulder High School anyways, because that's the place where you drop your special need bags. I think that's where T2 happens, right? Transition to.
No,
Oh.
both the transitions are at the res now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So the finish is separate from T1 and T2.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
but both transitions are at the res, and so, but yeah, you can drop, special needs, but you just kind of go down there and just get on the bus and head out, and again, they do this at St. George. Have plenty of have a warm jacket, even pants with you. It can be chilly in the morning, even if it's supposed to be hot out, and the last thing you want is to be cold.
Right.
Bring have a water bottle with you, have some snacks. Put it all in your morning bag that they give you, and then and just head out.
Right. So that's you were talking about have a water bottle with you. Of course, being hydrated is important. But let's say for people who are coming to Boulder and racing in altitude for the first time, do you have any thoughts on that, or any advice on should they focus on their hydration a little bit more, or anything in particular they should be doing the days before? Or
well, let's just get into the race execution aspect of this.
Yeah,
whole thing.
yeah, of
let's
course.
just do it.
Yeah.
Every race has its own kind of unique characteristics, right? Some are hilly,
Yep.
some are hot, some are really flat, and it's not like any of them are harder or easier, really. I don't think. It's just there's just different characteristics about them, and so the things that Boulder, the unique characteristics of Boulder are obviously the altitude, which if you're not from here is going to be an issue most likely, and the heat and the sun exposure, and
Right.
the wind. And so, and in terms of those things like the heat, the sun, and the wind, is if it is hot, then it's going to be really fucking hot. Okay. There's no like in between.
Exposed, right?
And the sun exposure along with the heat, like the altitude kind of magnifies everything. And so we've had races here where the thermometer only says 85 degrees and everyone's just dying, right? Like it's just crazy.
That's true.
And so the wind, it might not be windy. Last year at the reservoir, it never got windy. And out on the course, there was a 30-mile-an-hour wind coming out of the west, which had people going really slow, going up the gradual climbs that are on the bike course and just flying down them at 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so
right.
it's kind of one of those things. Another thing with the wind at Boulder, even if it is a slight 5-mile-an-hour wind, you're going to be in it the entire time.
Right.
Right. Like there's very little, I'm not in the wind here because there's a bunch of trees or a little hill. Like you're in the wind all the time.
Right.
And so, and then the concrete run. A lot of the run is on concrete, and there's one section in particular that we'll talk about that's just nuclear hot. Right?
Really?
You're in like an oven.
Huh.
And the part where you come down the path, where you come, you go by Rayback.
Yeah.
And then you go by, and you go by Raleigh Sport, and you go down that whole section before you get onto the creek path.
Yeah.
There's sections of the course where, and leaving the res is also very hot in the run, but we'll get to that in a minute. It's just in this basin of like, it's just like you're in a solar panel field. When it's really hot and sunny, it can be challenging. And so
now, the swim portion, the Boulder Reservoir, do you have any, if you have to compare it with other races, I mean, what kind of swim do you think it is? I mean, I've done it a few times, and it's a really nice, really
hey,
nice.
Steve, can I get another beer? Thanks, buddy. Love this place.
This
Colorado
is
Multi
great.
Sport is the best.
Best.
Boulder Reservoir is a man-made reservoir. It's very shallow, and so the temperature can swing a lot. But there's plenty of space out there. The way they have the whole transition area kind of laid out and the swim course laid out, I think is really good.
Yep.
The Boulder Reservoir, the water is very, very silty. You cannot see your hand swimming out in front of you. But the way the course is laid out, it's one loop, and basically the sun is kind of, if you look at the course on the map, the sun is kind of, as you're swimming out on that first leg, the sun is coming up kind of to your right. And so, but the buoys are on your left the whole time. And so the sun's never in your eyes as far as, thanks, buddy. The sun is never in your eyes when you're trying to look for the buoys.
Okay.
And so again, when you're on the final leg, if you're looking over to the left, kind of looking for buoys, it would be in your eyes. But if you're looking straight ahead down the buoy line into the finish, it's not, the sun's never in your eyes. So the course is laid out very well in that regard.
So this is probably very tactical, but would you go with regular goggles or mirrored goggles?
I would go with whatever you're comfortable with. I only wear mirrored goggles personally.
Got it.
But I would, it's kind of dark in the morning, but I mean, I would just wear whatever fits best and you're most comfortable with.
Totally.
Use what's tried and true. Don't buy any new stuff for me. Get yourself a good pair of Roka goggles. Use them in training, and then just do it.
Got it. Now, wetsuit, I think most of the years. How long has Ironman Boulders been around? 5, 6, 7 years?
14, since 2014.
Okay.
Was
So
the first
what,
year,
5
yeah.
years?
Yeah.
And I think every year people, it's been
it's been wetsuit for the amateurs every year. That might not be true. One year it might not have been. Again, it's a shallow reservoir, so it heats up really fast. But if we could show you outside, it's like 40 degrees and snowing. We just had this snowstorm, literally, and it's not supposed to be really warm again until this weekend. So there's no way. I cannot see this being not wetsuit legal for pros included, unless they put heaters in the water, because it's freezing out right now.
You remember? So 2017, I DNF Boulder. Okay, I had a silly bike crash. That was a silly crash. But I remember the days before the race. It got really cold to a point where I remember going to the swimming at the reservoir, thinking, am I really gonna have to buy one of those neoprene caps? Because I was wondering. I was just thinking, is it gonna be like a really cold swim? Because I think there was some kind of cold front thing that happened the days before. But again, Colorado's so Colorado, right? So you don't really know. So
No, I mean the swim course is laid out well, and it's definitely going to be a wetsuit swim.
Yeah.
And so, but
and the water, I guess it's pretty. Would you say calm in general, right? There's no choppy water.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
depends on
the wind can come up. There has been races at the res that have had some really choppy water, but again, it's early in the morning. And so, anything can happen with the weather, but generally speaking, it should be fine. It's not a gigantic reservoir like St. George or something like that, or like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not like that. It's very easy to get choppy, but.
Yep.
So, but it can, but it's unlikely.
So people are exiting the water, getting ready in transition 1, and then heading out. To start the bike portion.
Yeah.
What do you think of this? Like, I remember when I would leave transition and start riding, you get on, I think, what is that road called? 55th, and then you connect on J Road, I think. Those first miles, the road looks pretty flat, but it's a little it's not really flat. Like, I remember working hard those first miles.
Well, now the bike course now is you head out kind of the back way of the reservoir.
Oh,
and
I see.
You do that loop you go out and back on the diagonal.
Oh, okay.
And so the first kind of section of the bike, I don't know if it's even maybe it's 10 miles. Is pretty fast. Like when you're going away from the res, when you're riding sort of northeast, it's pretty fast, and so it's a great opportunity to just chill and kind of warm up into the bike. And let me get into this. I've got there's a few things that I think are super key to doing an Ironman in general. that you should keep in mind. And then we can also talk just about,
Of course.
how they're super specific for Boulder. But I mean, the first thing is pacing, right? Number one, a race execution, pacing. And so if you're really into the watts and you're kind of dialed on wattage and pace and what you're going to do on race day, if you're coming up from sea level to 5,000 feet, I mean, the science is an unacclimatized person is going to lose 9%.
Wow.
Which is significant.
Mm.
And so, you know, you can go ahead and take 9% off of your Ironman watts.
Yep.
Now, the other thing, and you could do the same with your pace, and on the run, the reality of that is the altitude affects everybody a little bit differently. And the other part of altitude and how it affects you is it affects you more and more the longer the event you're doing.
Oh.
So
9%.
And so there was a half Ironman up in Dillon, which is at 9,500 feet.
Wow. Yeah.
A few years ago, 2016, and is the highest triathlon I think ever.
Yeah.
Highest half ever. And so, and I actually went and did it, and I had some people do it, and like I ran the numbers for everybody, and myself included. And the same thing kind of happened to most of us, which is the percentages were great, but then as we got into the later part of the run, especially for the people that were less prepared for that running, like myself, is that the percentage, your pace started to slide even more.
Start fading.
Because, you know, it's a 5-hour race, or, you know,
Right.
for however long it took us. And so, you know, and heat as well. Heat affects run performance enormous, right?
Wow.
I can't I don't know how many times I have athletes come to, or call me or text me or whatever, and like, oh my God, I had a great run today. I'm like, well, it's 60 and, you know, drizzly outside. Of course you felt great. Right? Like everyone feels great on days like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, 9% loss. And I think the other thing when I get into, and when I talk about triathlon, and a lot of people, you know, I have a big cycling background, and I have a lot of triathletes who are strong cyclists as well. But I always tell people this, my athletes and other people, the only place that you can save energy on a triathlon and not immediately lose time is on the bike. Right? Like, I mean, unless you're just the insanely, like, really dynamic runner, you're not going to get to the run portion of an Ironman and go, I'm gonna back off for a few miles and recover. Like it's you know what I mean? You're gonna walk and you're gonna be going really, really slow.
Got it.
But backing off 5 or 10 watts on the bike, coasting on downhills or fast sections of the bike a little bit more than you would normally, taking the time to eat and drink a little bit more,
nutrition,
right? Like that can go a long way, and you won't really lose that much time. And so, keep that in mind. I tell this to pros too. I said, you know, listen, the bike is. I know you're a strong cyclist and you want to put time on people, but the bike is the only place that you can, like, save any kind of energy without immediately losing time because of it.
Yeah. Right. Nice. That's
you know,
a great point.
and so I think just figuring out some realistic pacing and being more conservative on the bike. And I always tell people this, you know, I've told this to countless athletes that say, I think I can go harder on the bike, Eric. And I'm like, great, prove it by running faster than I think you can.
Yeah.
Because everyone can do that.
Right.
And so if you're coming to Boulder and you're newer at the distance, or you're, you know, first time at altitude, or it's your first Ironman, save some gas on the bike, because this run, especially if it's hot out, is real, man. It will kick you in the ass bad.
And the run it's hard because, of course, several things: altitude, you're tired, or because the course is not necessarily that challenging, right? Or I don't know. I've heard from some people saying that it can be pretty hilly. What do you think about it? I mean,
you know, I'll tell you, the bike and the run both have a lot of these, like, false flats, and so Boulder, right?
True.
The Front Range and the plains in Boulder in Colorado we have these roads that look flat and feel flat, and you're riding at 15 miles an hour and you're killing yourself going, what is going on?
So this happens to me and I don't know if this is still part of the bike course, when you get on 36, so you just finish riding on J Road, you get on 36, and then you start cycling, before you're about to hit the downhill, you like, the road looks flat, but you're just going so hard, and like you feel like you're not making any progress. It's like demoralizing a little bit. Yeah.
And so if you look at if you're listening to this and you're, pull up the course and all of these pieces of road where you're riding west, okay, you go west up Neva. Neva's a pretty flat road until you get to the very end.
Right.
And if you have a 5 mile an hour headwind, which you won't even notice, you're going to be going slow. Okay. St. Vrain, even more so. There's some more chip seal there. And then Hygiene Road, when you turn around and come back up Hygiene again, these false flat roads. And so people, look, stop worrying about your time for the race. Stop worrying about your average speed on the bike. Like, that stuff is not helpful.
Yeah.
What you really need to be focusing on is your exertion. That is the only thing that you can control. People don't realize how much like a different road surface and like a 3 to 5 mile an hour wind change can affect your speed enormously.
Right.
Stop worrying about it. Don't even put it on your monitor. Okay. Put heart rate on there, put watts on there, cadence, right? The things that you can control. And so, when you're riding west on those sections of road, really focus on making sure that like your cadence is where you want it to be, your exertion level is where you want it to be, power, heart rate, all the tools that you might be using.
Nutrition as well,
perceived
right?
exertion. Yeah. And then, and nutrition is, that's like my second thing on long course. It's like the most important, it's a hugely important thing. And so, I'm not going to get into the numbers on it. You definitely should with your coach or your mentors or your friends or whoever, your nutritionist. I don't know, but I'll tell you this: whatever you're going to do, make sure that it's simple and easy and just easy to keep track of. I see these people with $10,000 aerodynamic bikes, and they've got 4 water bottles on it in the most unaerodynamic spots and positions ever, and 30 goos taped to the top tube. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's like I saw a bike. I don't know who it was, but the person literally had 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches taped to the handlebar.
Oh my God.
Like the base bar of their thing. And I mean, look, don't try to make your bike light and aero and sacrifice nutrition and fueling. Okay. Right. Definitely don't. But take the time. I don't care how competitive you are. Take the time to make sure that you've got a good setup that you can use.
Right.
You're not going to drop something.
Right.
And that is, reasonably aerodynamic is going to get you through your day. They've got aid stations every 10 miles or 15 miles on the bike.
How do you remind yourself to eat, for instance, because that's something that I used to struggle with in races. I would have my watch. I never had a fancy bike computer, so I would always rely on my watch, but I would never listen to my watch because it's loud, right? So I don't know. I would always try to eat a gel every hour and things like that. So do you have any particular thoughts on that or?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think it goes with what I'm saying of keep things simple. Right. And so I have athletes that will use all liquid nutrition and they'll have a water bottle that has X amount of calories in it. And they'll get another one in special needs. Maybe they have some other, food items, but it's keeping track of time, so how long you're racing. Right? Not how long you're out there for or average speed, but when the hour comes up, you should have X amount of fuel down.
Right.
And if you don't, then you're behind. You know,
that's true.
Get on task. Some people set an alarm, like you said, which is fine. So depending on the athlete, I mean, for the athletes that I coach, it doesn't even if they're not necessarily super competitive, beginner or pro or anyone in between, we come up with a fueling plan that goes with the course.
Okay.
Right. And so we're going to do, 300 calories an hour, and we're going to do a bottle and a half of water an hour. And it's going to have we're going to have this much sodium and blah, blah, blah. And so, but for them, we'll be like, look, these are the sections you want to fuel. You want to fuel here and you want to fuel here. And so now not only do we have we need to do this per hour, but there's sections of the course that they're cued into that are like, oh, here's where I'm going to get a bunch of that in. Right.
And for specifically for Ironman Boulder, is there any particular section or sections that you think are critical for? It depends on the conditions. Yeah. And so it's not an incredibly hilly course. Right. And so for the more hilly courses, like Lake Placid or Whistler or St. George, we get into that a little bit more. I think with Boulder, you can kind of fuel wherever you want to. I've got some more elite athletes. I shouldn't say elite, but more competitive athletes where we're looking at like 1% type of athletes, and we get into, don't eat and drink here. Yeah. We're doing it here. Oh, wow. And so it depends on the athlete. And again, it still depends on the conditions. And so, got it. But there's a lot of places where, you can fuel well. And I would say safety first. Don't, especially if it's windy and you've got big crosswinds and stuff like that, then you want to, and actually that gets into my other thing, my third thing for good Ironman execution, which is know your course and know your equipment. Okay. So know your equipment. All right. It should be tried and true. You should know how everything works. You should know how to change a flat tire. You should know, if something happens with your shifting, you should know how to fix it on the fly, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And then the other thing is know your course, right? This map and profile should be burned into your head. I did Lake Placid personally, and then I did the same thing. I had athletes that did Ironman St. George in 2012. And I was like, you have to know this map and this profile so well that you don't need to see the course. And when I did Lake Placid, I never don't drive the course. I think driving the course is a waste of time. A lot of people are into that. I'm not. It's like more car time, and you just don't need it to get all tight and stiff. And so know the course, like know how long these sections are, know where you are in the course. And that can be really, really helpful, because if it does get really windy and then you know the course, you can be like, you know what? I'm thirsty, but guess what? In 2 miles, I'm going to be in a tailwind. Yeah. And it's a flat piece of road, and I'm going to be able to eat and drink there, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to plan ahead, because when I take that next turn, I'm going to be in a crosswind, and I'm not going to want to be eating and drinking and reaching around and getting out of my, right? I'm going to want to be kind of holding on to my bike and riding. And so knowing the course can make you go a lot faster, and it can make things a lot easier and safer. And I will tell you this one section of the course of Boulder Ironman, when you come down 75th, right? So you're gonna have to look at your map. Maybe you can show them, but when you come down 75th and you come out onto the diagonal, and then you turn up 63rd, when you go onto your second lap, that intersection has been confusing for people in the past. A bunch of people kind of missed the course. And so Sam Long, right? Yeah. Good buddy of mine. And he just won Ironman Chattanooga.
He just won 70.3 Chattanooga.
Congrats,
I've worked with him in the past, and he's a good buddy of mine. We still talk a lot about racing and tactics and all that kind of stuff. And he missed a turn at when he was at Oceanside. Oh man. And I'm texting him, and we're texting back and forth, and I was like, dude, you got to know the course, man. I don't care if someone points you the wrong way.
I mean, that's
Yeah, and he was like, yeah, he's like, you're right. I'm like, you've done the course before. Like, you got to do your diligence.
Yeah,
man.
that's true.
You've like got to know. And so again, read through the directions, look at this course map, and you better know where you're going and where you're supposed to turn, because people get pointed in wrong directions sometimes. Hand signals get mixed up sometimes with police officers holding up traffic, and people think that happens a lot. If a police officer goes like this to hold up traffic, and then athletes think that they're pointing in that direction. Know where you are going, okay? And that will save you a lot of stress. And I've missed a turn in a triathlon also. So I will say, like it happens. So know where you're going.
No, but you're right. I mean, and it's such a simple and basic thing. But I remember my own experience doing Ironmans. I would never even go on drive the course. I'll be like, we'll figure it out.
And
not ideal.
Like you could drive. Because I've driven. Years and years and years ago, I drove a course one time, and I was like, this climb isn't bad at all. and then I was riding it, and I was like, holy cow, like this is serious. So it just doesn't give you a good picture, I don't think.
Right.
Know where you're going. Driving the course, driving the diagonal highway here, 119. Mm-hmm. It's not the same. It's a divided highway. And so if you try to drive it, you're going to be on the wrong side of the road, and then you'll be coming back on the right side of the road for the race. And the race takes place all on one side.
Got it.
And so you could drive it, but know that turn. You come down off of 75th, and then you turn onto the diagonal. Mm-hmm. Read the turn-by-turn directions. Look at the map. Know how far it is. Right? Like know where you're supposed to go.
And you were saying that transition T2, it's also the Boulder Reservoir. So athletes are gonna change their clothes and get on, start running on.
Yeah. So here's another thing for you too. Yeah. So you come back into the res to T2, right? You get off your bike, you go through the transition like normal. They've got the tents and your run bag and the whole deal. Leaving the res on the run if it's hot out. Were you out there last year?
Well, no, because I couldn't find a place to park. That's what I'm talking about. But
so if you're a spectator and you're going to go out to the res and stay there, make sure you bring food and water with you, because there is very little out there. It's really, really hard to get. So bring plenty of water and food. And there's also very little shade. So if you have a little thing that, do that too. But they do run shuttles like all the time. Now racers, if it's hot and sunny, and this was something that we completely screwed up last year with my athletes, is we did all this training on the course, and it was the first time they used this run course, and I was like, okay, the first 6 miles of this race are going to be super easy of the run.
Okay.
And they were the worst. Yeah. They're so bad.
Where do you start running on 55th?
Yeah.
Oh man, there's like a little hill that's pretty steep, but it's short, but that can be a little demoralizing.
You run out of the res like the normal way that we go in there, and the normal, like the local races go out, right?
Right.
So you go out, it's 51st, but
51st,
so running out of the res and then down 51st Street, it's just like, it's so hot. If it's hot, it's going to be really hot. And you're in this, like, there's no shade.
Yep.
Okay. And again, there's all these false flats. If you're running west, you're running uphill. Slow down. And so if you're, look at the course, these sections where you're running west are these first two sections on J, and then there's a section where you're on like a bike path, which you will get a little shade on. They're these really gradual kind of false flats. And, if you're running up a 2% grade at race pace, you're really running like 20 or even 30 seconds faster in reality, effort-wise. And so really, really just kind of chill there. And then, you come down Folsom there, or it says, they have the number here, but
got it.
We call it Folsom in the bubble. And then you kind of get onto the path, and now it's concrete, right? When you're on the path, it's all concrete.
Yeah,
So-
the path. What do you think of that? I don't know. I don't know if I'm a big fan of that course because it gets so busy. Because the path is just basically like running on a sidewalk, right? So and
It's narrow in spots. Yeah.
it's busy and everybody is doing their own thing and people get distracted and I don't know. The only Ironmans I've done, I've been in Louisville, and when you run in Louisville, you do it in like downtown. They shut down the whole
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and it's
That whole road.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Well, it is. I think by that time, especially on the course, when you get down to mile, by the time you get to mile 5 and 6, when you're on the path,
mm-hmm.
it's the race is pretty spread out.
Okay.
And it's the path is open also to people. So,
Oh, yeah.
you're going to get frantic coaches
Totally.
that are like riding their bike around. And I remember like the first year, like 1 year doing that. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is ridiculous. It's, but and so it is open.
That's kind of cool. I have to say, you have the opportunity to have your coach next to you, and because
Well, you can't be next to people for too long. It's illegal.
Well, yeah,
you
true,
know what I mean?
True.
But the path is open, so just be heads up when you're out there running. It is kind of spread out, and the other thing is like running is slow.
Right.
So it's not like it's the bike course. That would be crazy. But and so as you get into when you get on the Boulder Creek path, which is labeled here, the long
Mm-hmm.
section that goes like east and west. You're closer to the creek there, and there's a lot more shade. It can actually be cooler,
And that's actually the Boulder Creek path is a great spot for like family members and friends to just basically spectators in general.
There's a lot of spectators there. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're kind of there's busy spots and quieter spots, but there's I feel like there's a lot of spectators.
And then a lot going on. That's one of the things that I would say. I don't know if you're in the middle of your run and you're tired, and just be aware of like sometimes people cross the path or just doing their own thing, the spectators, and I don't know, just be I guess a little aware of what you're doing. And yeah, I mean that it gets really hot by that time as well, of course. So
yeah, that time of the day. So the worst spot of the run course is if you look at the map, this section where it has mile 6 and then it has mile 20 because you come back up that section.
got it.
That's Goose Creek Path, I think.
Okay.
And you go all the way up to Rayback this year and turn around and come back. That section is the worst.
Why is that?
Well, there probably won't be that many people there, number one. Number two, it's really hot. You're in this it's a drainage. There's a path there, but it's a planned drainage for floods, right? When you go down that whole stretch, and it's really hot and there's no wind, and so again, if it is hot, that section of the course can be particularly brutal.
Good. Good to know.
I think where is special needs? I think special needs is in there. No, it's probably before there. Well, whatever. No, it's up on Boulder Creek Path. But that section of the course is it's really, really challenging, especially when you're coming back up it, because now you're getting into mile 18 and 20.
Oof. Yeah.
And it's, again, when you go back up that, it's uphill. It's hot. Okay. So something to think about.
Got it.
But yeah, I really like this run course. I think Ironman did a really good job with it because it's like, it's kind of like you're going somewhere, It's not like you're doing some loop or you're doing like some stupid out and back with, just to get the mileage. It's like you're running from the res, you're running into town, and then you go up and down the path a couple times. And, I haven't done it. I never will, but it's it looks
good point.
It's kind of I kind of like it personally. It's like you're kind of going somewhere.
Got it. So, man, yeah. Yeah, it's a long day.
It is a long day, I mean, and let me say this, again, fueling, have a good plan for the run. Yes, there's a lot of feed zones, but have a good plan for the run. I've had I've had a few people that kind of say, oh, well, I've got this figured out until mile 10 of the run, and then I'll just use feed zones. Well, figure out what you're going to do with the feed zones. Right. They got them every mile or close to. So it's like, yes, there's plenty of stuff out there, but know what you're going to do. And I have this last thing on doing a Ironman. This is kind of universal, I think, but doing any kind of really long distance event like this takes a really extreme amount of motivation and determination. And so you need to be ready for that. And we could get into the training aspects of that and making sure that you're really well tapered and all this peaked well and all this kind of stuff. But the other thing too is if you do these other things, if you pace well and you fuel properly and you know your course, right, and you know what's coming up, then it makes it easier you don't get caught off guard. Right. And so it makes it easier when you're like, right, Eric said this part was really shitty, so I'm gonna be tough here. Like this part's supposed to be hard, right? And and so if you know what's kind of coming at you and you know the possibilities, then it makes it easier to kind of process all of that kind of stuff mentally. And then, the other thing I always tell people with race execution, like the number one thing, I always start the conversation and end it with the same thing when I talk about this with athletes, but it's like, be very present. Focus on what you are doing right now. Everything that you do should be a decision, not you shouldn't be forced in anything, right? Like, don't be going too hard because you're going uphill. Like you've got like 22 gears in your bike now, use them. Right. Like, if you're standing or sitting or eating or drinking or in the aero bars, with your head down, trying to be really aero, you should be doing this on purpose. And so really just stay present and focus on, what you are doing right now. Right. And then the next step is think about what do you have coming up in the next 5 or 10 minutes? Right. Is there a feed zone coming up? Should I drink some water and, get ready to do this or, so, and outside of that, you shouldn't be thinking about it. Don't be thinking about the bike during the swim. Don't be thinking about what you did wrong on the bike when you're on the run.
That's so true.
Just stay super, super present and focused. And if you do that, you're likely to get through the day super, super well. And especially for you beginners, I'll tell you, when you see those people at the Olympics, like just break down crying, okay? Kenny Withrow. Were you at 2014 Ironman Boulder? I mean, he had full on meltdown at the finish line. Kenny, I'm calling you out.
Is that the year when he qualified?
Yeah. So, he was like a top 20 age group guy. And then, and then he was coming to some of my group workouts and he was like really focused and really determined. And he's like, I want to qualify for Kona. And I was like, okay. And that was the first year of Boulder. Things went super, super well. And he was very, very focused day to day. What am I going to eat? Like, I'm going to bike. What time am I going to get up? The whole thing. And even in the race, it's just very, very focused on right now. What am I doing right now? Why am I doing it? Whether it's work, training, compartmentalized very well. Yeah. And even during the race. And then, when those people finish, that you see them finish and succeed, and then they're just like, right? Like that's because they've been so focused, and now they've like realized what they've done.
Yeah, it's great to see that. I also think about one of your athletes, Liz West. She's the captain of the Vixen Racing. I think when you've been training her for several years, I think, and I think the time when she qualified for Kona I remember seeing that photo on Instagram. It was great because you can tell, there was the result of years and years of training, and what an amazing accomplishment, and also the fact that I'm so happy for, like, for instance, Jetson Swayze. Jet, this is the second time that I mentioned you on the podcast. So.
Wow.
Anyway, going to France and
does he get royalties for that? Jet, you should.
But I mean it's great.
He's doing really, really well this year.
So it's awesome. We have to wrap up this podcast, but we need to do more, for races in general. But so Eric, it's been fun. Thank you.
This is great. Thanks.
Of course. For people, they want to look for you online, where can they find you?
Bunch of places. EKEndurancecoaching.com is
Awesome.
my website.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram handle is EKEndurance.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Twitter, but I'm not. I just...
What's Twitter?
Right. I don't know. The social media thing is just too difficult.
I know.
I'm not good at it. Sorry.
No, but you know what? One of my favorite things about Eric's Instagram page, especially, is he has a series of short videos called EK Minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So short videos where he shares really, really good stuff on all things swim, bike, run, and again, go to their Instagram, his Instagram page, and also the Vixen. What are the handles of both of your teams?
Boulder Racing
_CMS
is the team, and then Vixen Racing.
Vixen Racing.
Vixen Racing is the just Vixen Racing for
awesome.
Those ladies.
Cool. Awesome.
Boulder Racing _CMS, but you'll see it. There's the logos on there and all that kind of stuff.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, of course, and we'll do more in the future. Eric Kenney, everybody. All right.
Thanks.
So, Eric, how did you start coaching overall?
So I was always very into. I studied sciences in college, and then I was always very into the physiology and the training aspect and what was good and why. But my first coaching job was the assistant varsity coach, BB&N at a prep school. And I remember I liked it. It was a great group of kids, and I basically had the second tier of the varsity team.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I just remember I came into the boathouse, and the head coach came up to me and he said, "What did you do with those guys yesterday?" And I was like, I don't know. We're just kind of working on this thing, and it was good. It was it was good practice, I guess. And he was a teacher at the school as well. And he said, he was like, those guys would not stop talking about how fast they were going yesterday all day at school.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, wow. And the head coach looked at me, and again, like, I'm in my 20s, early 20s. And, he looked at me and he said, "You got them." He said, "They'll do anything now." And I thought, and right then I just couldn't, I was like, I'm good at this. Like, I'm good at this. I really like it, and I'm getting paid. And I just didn't think that those things went together for many people.
What do you think you did differently that made, your athletes enjoy what they were doing?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I don't know. Maybe we should ask them, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I think I was just into it, and I was just really passionate about it. And
So that was the, I guess, like a milestone type of moment when you realized.
Yeah, it was. I just thought, I'm never stopping doing this. Like, this is it. This is it's all I have to do. And the practice was one of those things where it was like, it was, an hour of, why are we doing this? Can't we do this? Like, can't we go hard? Can't we just like let it rip and blah blah blah? And it was an hour of no. Do it this way. Do it this way. Do it this way. And then the last 5 minutes of practice, I was like, okay, go. Like, let it rip. And they just couldn't believe how fast they were going at that point. And so, it was one of those things where it was like this kind of, I don't know, it was definitely like a trust building moment that I had no idea was happening at the time. But it was really cool. I just thought, when that head coach told me that, I thought, this is it. Like I'm never stopping doing this.
Nice.
So
Nice. Awesome. Cool.